Good afternoon and welcome to today's CIM webinar on Google Analytics Demystified, written and presented by Graham Hansell. Before I pass you over to Graham, I'd just like to highlight a few points. Firstly, the webinar will last for around an hour and will include an interactive Q&A after the presentation. All the delegates are muted, so the only voices you'll hear throughout the webinar will be mine and Graham's. You can, however, send chat questions for the Q&A at any time during the presentation using the box located on your screen. We will answer as many of these as we can at the end. A link to the recording of this webinar will be emailed to you within the next couple of days, and you will also have access to it via Marketing Expert. Anyway, I won't take up any more of your time now, so over to you, Graham.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd just like to try and clarify the title. I think Demystified is a big statement, all in 45 minutes. So from my perspective, I'm really delivering something which I think covers all the broad bases of what Google Analytics can actually do for the majority of sites, and then giving you a steer as to where to go next. So it's, and I'm expecting a lot of questions at the end, so I'm going to be around for as long as those questions keep coming. Right, to kick off, what I want to do is just look at asking you a simple, straightforward question. It's a poll, so you can answer this online through surveys, and really what I want to understand is, out of the audience, and there's over 100 people who are actually attending this, what type of site are you actually working with? Is it a brand site? Is it e-commerce or lead generation? And in this case, because sites normally are pushed to do a lot of different things at the same time, multiple answers are allowed. So if you can start voting now, that would be great, just so I can get a gauge as to what type of sites you're actually working with. Let's have a quick look. Yep, people are starting to vote now. And then, so we're looking at it so far, the majority of people are running brand websites, some people on e-commerce, and then the second most popular is actually lead generation. That's great. I'll give you a couple more minutes to see other people voting in. So it's still, very much dictated by brand. What I have got is a little bit at the end here. So brand is going to be, we'll kick off in this presentation really talking about content and how you can value it. Then we look at specifics around traffic generation, and then we're going to go into lead generation and e-commerce. So we'll be covering all of these bases. That's fine. Thank you everyone for voting. Looking at it, out of the people who have voted, the majority are definitely running brand websites. With nearly 70% of people looking for brand engagement out of their sites. Then second is lead generation, and third is e-commerce. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. Right, so moving forward. So as I mentioned in today's webinar, content, first of all, trying to work out what's working for you. Obviously, most websites are made up of many, many pages. It could be tens, hundreds, or tens of thousands of pages making up the content on there. So coming up with simple ways of valuing it and what is working for your actual goals. Then ensuring that you have, leading you into an idea about grouping content. Because if you have got, say, over 100 pages, in a lot of cases those pages will actually start forming natural content groups. So I'll talk you through how you can actually set up grouping, which can help you again with your valuation and seeing what is actually impacting and effective for your audience rather than necessarily just being produced because it's considered to be a requirement of the brand. How to tell if people are actually really reading your pages. So this is more of an introduction to the sort of add-ons that you can bring into Google Analytics to actually be able to say, okay, are people that we're getting people viewing the pages, but are they reading them? Are they actually scrolling down through them? And if so, how far are they getting through them? So we'll be touching on that. Then traffic channels, the big impact that's going to happen tomorrow, we'll be talking more about this later, is mobile given. So this is the big change that's coming from Google. Google is actually going to start de-ranking is probably the best way to describe it. Websites that aren't mobile friendly when people search on mobile. So we'll be touching on how you can use Google Analytics to look at what the likely impact of that will be on your site and and the actions you can take. Then talking about traffic, is looking at the ability to look beyond the last click measure. Now I'll be asking people, we have a poll later as to how you measure, and then importantly looking at how you can use last, first and other forms of attribution to get a better insight into what's working for your site. Then finally, quick touch on some points around e-commerce. As I say, about 20% of people actually are running e-commerce on their site. So again, that's going to be something we touch on towards the end. And then finally, we wrap up. We'll be looking at the Q&A. So moving into it. So content. One of the things that's very important for most brands is to look at what's actually engaging with their audience. You may have, obviously, if you're a publisher, the more pages that you produce, potentially you can value it through ad inventory. But for a brand, it's about actually engaging and starting creating a conversation through your website. So let's look at some of the information that's available to you in the standard content reports. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that you've got behavior reports. That's one of the 4 key reporting types that are available to you in Google Analytics. You have behavior. Underneath that, you have site content. The big thing for me is to look at all of these reports rather than just one of them. So we'll start off with the simplest one, which will be all pages. So this is an example of all pages report. You can see the normal graph at the top, then and the list of pages on the left-hand side. Now, one thing I like to explain early on when you're looking at a report like this is what are the metrics actually meaning. So here you can look at page views. So this is the amount of times, quite simply as the name implies, the amount of times that the actual pages have been viewed. But then the second measure here is unique page views. So this is an attempt to, inside of Google Analytics, to say how many individual times have pages been viewed rather than multiple times. Because obviously you can go backwards and forwards between, say the home page multiple times, and in that case then that will create all the page view number. Whereas the unique page views is an attempt to draw out how many times, as it says, uniquely individual pages being viewed, which again can show a difference. If you look at the third item, the third page listed here, they actually lose somewhere in the region of about over 5,000 page views difference between the unique and the actual page view number. So this is just giving you an idea that you've got some pages have a high propensity for repeat visits, and other pages are actually viewed by individuals more frequently. Another point on the arrow on the right-hand side here, the purple arrow on the right, another point I always look to is trying to create a page value when we're looking at setting up goals for clients, and I'll talk a little bit more about how to do that in a minute. But once you've got an actual goal value set, each of your pages can then be valued as to how much they contribute in pounds and pence towards that towards your goals that are being completed on your site. So looking at the actual website itself as a generator of either savings, so that can be saving in costs, or in terms of revenue, which is easier to do if you're running an e-commerce or a lead generation site, but being able to actually value these interactions with a monetary value suddenly can bring through a pound value against each of the pages on the site. And that is something that you can do quite simply. Any goals that are set up inside of your Google Analytics, you can actually go into the setup, look at the goal description. Under there you will have goal details, and in this example you can actually set at any point we're looking at newsletter registration in this case value, which is optional, but as I say, to get those pounds actually showing inside of your content, you're able to put in this case £2.50 valuation against each of the newsletters, the people registering for newsletters. At that point going forward, your reports will start to show a valuation in a pound sense against each of the pages on your site, which can help you draw to those that are really contributing towards your goals versus those that are steering people or maybe a distraction, or maybe actually not benefiting the actual goals set up for the site. So Drilling down, you've actually got another set on the left-hand side here. We've moved down into the report called Content Drilldown. Content Drilldown simply outlines all your pages, because obviously in a lot of sites you may have, as I say, thousands or hundreds of thousands of pages on there. At that point, you want to be able to start grouping them together. So the simplest one, which all forms of Google Analytics allows you to interact with, is the content drill down. This is based on the site hierarchy, so how the actual content has been grouped into folders on the website is what's driving the page path level, and therefore that is shown here in the forms of the different folders and the amount they're being used, again across the same metrics: page views, unique page views, average time on page. The bounce rate, so bounce rate is used quite frequently to show whether people are actually engaging with only one page in their visit or multiple pages, so it can give you a guide as to whether people are actually getting additional value or your calls to action are strong on those pages. And then finally on the right hand side there, your exit rate. So in any one of these sections of the site, how likely is it that it will be the last visit that they make to any page on your site. So they're the standard metrics that are available. You don't have to do any custom setup, and Content Drill Down allows you to group things together by the way that the site is structured. But that, again, that grouping may not reflect how marketing wants to see its content or is planning it. So we'll go on later and look at how we can change that. Then a report that I use all the time is to demonstrate what pages are actually effective at drawing people into the site, the landing page. So in this case, we're looking at in this example, I've just given you the top 3 landing pages for this site. But here, in this case, it's not actually the home page that's the most popular site. It's specific, deeper pages. In this case, for this site, it's recipes. And you're able to see at that point, okay, so we expect most people to come through a home page, but by using your landing page report, you can actually identify which pages are the gateways, the entry points into your site. And from there, you can then start seeing how effective are they. For instance, what's the level of bounce rate? Again, you can see in the middle there, the bounce rate telling you whether people are actually, if there's strong enough calls to action to draw people deeper into the site. Is there, for instance, strong related content? In this case, with this site, they've got a highly performing page, which is acting as a major landing page for the whole site, but a very high bounce rate, 91%, meaning people are just engaging with that one page and then not looking at any other pages of the site. It's potentially a missed opportunity. And again, when you look through, you can, using your landing page report rather than the all pages of the content drill down report I showed you earlier, you're able to actually compare the people entering the site, the journey that they go on, and whether they complete the goals and convert to what you were actually have set up. So moving forward, what content works best? Now this is another example where you've got landing pages. So this is what is actually described. If you look at I'm going back a slide here. Here we're actually into behavior flow. So just underneath behavior, you've got overview and behavior flow on the left-hand nav bar. You're able to see here that the behavior flow can show you the landing pages and where people are entering the site and where they go on to most frequently next. Now, in totality, where everything's shown, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to read. So one of the techniques you can use is to actually bring in a specific landing page and highlight it by just left-clicking on it. When you left-click on it, it'll highlight different pages. Sorry, I'm just going to cough, pardon me. Better. So you highlight it and it produces a result going through to the rest of the page on the site as shown in the next page. So in this page, you're able to see the fact that by highlighting, so you just left-click on one of the starting landing pages, and it will actually show you through what the most popular pages following there are once people have entered that site. This can lead to far greater insights rather than just looking at the whole behavior flow. You're actually able to identify specific landing pages and therefore identify them based on campaigns or specific opportunities for you to increase decrease the drop-off or increase the depth of visit into the site by using this report. Now, I mentioned earlier about the fact that you've got the ability to look at reports, and the example I gave you earlier was the Drilldown report, which actually gave you the site grouped by the standard folders and the structure inside of the CMS. Whereas in this report, you are able to actually group content based on how you want to see your pages and sections. So not the ones set up by the web designers, but using your own grouping. So in this case, what you have is the ability inside of your administration of where you're looking at, you click on the admin tab, you can go into the view for any one of your websites that you're managing, and you can actually just click on the content grouping, and at that point you're able to actually produce a specific grouping based on the pages that you want them. So in this example, we've grouped blog posts together, we've grouped the category pages and the About Us pages. This groups your, enables you to see your pages rather than, as I say, inside of just a big long list of the most popular. It actually allows you to see, okay, different types of content and how they're pushing specific types of people through the site where they are engaging. Now, the other benefit of creating grouping content, as well as being able to go beyond just the way that your site is structured, gives you the ability to start looking at how people interact with different types of pages. Now, this is an example which is actually a plugin. It's actually a JavaScript plugin that you can put into your CMS, written by a very interesting man, Justin Catroni, who writes very frequently, and his blog is an excellent one to follow on the best practice inside of Google Analytics. But what this allows you to do, and I've got a link here and it'll be shared around afterwards, it allows you to actually start tracking how far down a page. So if you took your blog pages, for instance, it actually starts showing you how far down the page people have actually read. So yes, in your standard reports, it will tell you how long people have spent on a page, but it won't tell you how far through a page they've actually gone. Using this little addition to Google Analytics, it enables you to see, okay, how many people started the page, how many people scrolled through it, and how many people got to the bottom. This is a very powerful device to answer questions such as which blog posts are being read, and therefore where inside of the blog post you might want to put additional calls to action to related content. If everyone's getting halfway down and then leaving, then you may have the ability to then move people, your calls to action, higher up inside the page, and therefore enabling better, rather than decreasing your bounce rate, and enabling people to engage with more of the content that you've developed inside your site. So Google Analytics in itself is a very powerful tool, but as much as anything, it's what you can extend it to. Most questions that are raised, anything that is available inside of your website is normally able now to be measured and brought into Google Analytics, and therefore enabling you to answer a big question like, do people actually read the pages? Not just are they visiting them, but are they actually reading them? Okay, so that's it for content. I'm just touching on things here. Obviously, I actually run this as part of a two-day course, so there's a lot more I could go into around each of these sections, but I want to touch on something for everyone during this session. So inside of the traffic channels, one of the big questions I always look for is, what is actually working? What's actually bringing in? It's fine looking at all these visits coming into a website, but where are they coming from, and where can you get more of them from? And therefore, you need to be looking at the traffic channels that are working for you. And we'll look at two techniques here. One, which is a major threat for tomorrow, and then the second one, which is going to be possibly insightful for some of you regarding attribution. So we've got another poll here. What I'm just asking you to do is answer the question, is your website mobile friendly? So if you can jump over to the poll and give me some, it's quite simple yes and no answer. is your site considered to be mobile friendly by yourselves? Because obviously from tomorrow, for those who are aware of it, Google's now going to start judging websites and being able to giving you the ability to be found inside of web search and actually boosted for people who are actually using mobile phones. Now, looking at your results here, 70% of people inside of this session, they're saying the site's mobile friendly. That's brilliant. 30% at the moment are saying it's not. So that's really good to know. Out of the best part of 100 people here. So again, that's the normal sort of split. We're seeing probably about 40% of websites are considered by Google to be not mobile friendly. So one of the things to look at, if you're in the 30% of people, thank you very much for everyone voting. That's fine for now. We'll go back to the slides. So if we actually look at it and say, okay, from tomorrow, this is the 21st of April, what the SEO community are calling Mobilegeddon, which is when Google launches this new preference for mobile-friendly websites inside of the mobile algorithm. It's actually going to mean that websites are going to start losing traffic from mobile users, and because Google isn't showing their results as much as they have done, as in up until today. So you assume your website's friendly. That's great, as long as you've tested it, and we'll look at a couple of techniques. One, we're going to assess what the potential impact is, and this is a simple way of doing it. You can go into Google Analytics and look inside of your source medium, all traffic, source medium, Google Organic, and then what this will show you, by putting on the mobile traffic segment, it'll actually show you on the screen how much, and this is inside of your segmentation, it'll actually show you what the risk and potential impact is. So anyone can do this. Mobile is set up as a standard segment inside of all Google Analytics. So all you're doing is you're going to your Google Analytics, look inside of all traffic, going through to clicking on the Google Organic result, going in there and switching on the mobile segment. And as soon as you've done that, you're able to then say, okay, this is how much traffic is currently coming from Google Organic from people who are using mobile devices. So this is where your risk and potential impact is going to be. Now, the advantage is tomorrow, quite possibly the 70% of people with mobile-friendly websites are actually going to see their mobile search traffic go up in this sector, in this segment. So again, this is something to start looking for over the next week. Google's estimating it's going to be a worldwide rollout, so this isn't something that's just going to be restricted to the US, and this is going out worldwide over the next 7 days. So if you start seeing changes in your traffic, and especially inside of this graph here where it starts dropping down, then you know that even though you might think that your site is mobile enabled, and it might not be considered as much by Google themselves. To check that, and we'll move on. To check that, we'll just look at some examples here. So Google is trying to help websites, and their first step is that they're saying to people, go onto the Google search on your mobile phone and actually type in your site name and look at the pages that are coming up from it. And the example on the right-hand side here actually shows you when a mobile-friendly website has been identified in the web search results, you'll actually say mobile-friendly, quite straightforward. But if the mobile-friendly tag hasn't been applied to your web pages, and that's something to be aware of here, it's actually at the page level. This isn't just applied to a whole site. It's actually set at a page level, so the majority of your pages may be already considered to be mobile friendly, but some of them may be missing out on, and reasons for that could be just the width of a graphic on your page may be false to a certain size, so therefore breaking or forcing mobile users to scroll horizontally, so to left and right. In that case, then that page could be considered to be mobile unfriendly, and therefore you're going to lose traffic to it from people searching on mobile phones. Now, I've given some links here, and we are going to be sharing around links later on outside of this session. This will be emailed to you, so you will actually have a set of resources, both to Justin Cotroni's blog as well as to the YouTube channel, and also these links in here, so you don't have to worry too much about the actual resources. You're going to get all these links following here, but I will say that for 30% of people who have a mobile unfriendly website today, this could become a big priority for you over the next few days if you haven't already made it so. Right, so that's mobile, and just a quick example, what I wanted to show you there was how people can actually use Google Analytics, not just to see what's happening, but also when a big event's coming up, to look at to start quickly building business cases for why a site, even though people don't think their audience uses mobiles, what is at stake if, you know, in this case, Google is actually going to stop showing your website as much when people are searching on mobiles. So my next question to everyone out there, we've got about over 100 people here, so I just want to do a quick poll on who knows the difference between first click and last click attribution. So I just want to test to see what level we are at and where we're out here. So this is the next poll. If people can go in and actually start voting on that, that will give me an idea as to where people are familiar with this. Because from my perspective, it's quite simple. It's just a yes or no question. So the question is, are you familiar with the terms last click and first click? And that just guides me as to the next section as to whether you want to, how you can actually use this insight to be able to say, okay, yeah, this is something that can help us. Okay, interestingly, more or less switched exactly around from the mobile survey, which is where we're looking at 30% of people are familiar with the term first and last click, whereas we're actually looking at 70% of people aren't familiar. So I'll just let the poll run a little bit longer, but this gives me an idea. Okay, so just to introduce the concept to you, okay, we can stop voting now. That's more or less everyone. That's brilliant. Thank you very much for everyone who voted. So just to go back to the slide, so thank you for that. So the majority of people here aren't familiar with the first and last click attribution, and this is really what we're looking for here, is attribution. What is causing your traffic to work for you? Which channels are actually working for you, and when? And when we say when, the vast majority, and in the slide I'm showing you at the moment, all of the traffic that you see coming through to you on inside of the acquisition reports are all measured on last click. And what that means is what the reports are telling you is the last place people came from. So in this case, you can see organic search being people coming out of Google and Bing, etc. Direct traffic, bookmarks and people typing in the domain, referral traffic, people coming in from other websites, and then social traffic are the four big channels that were driving traffic into this website. But, and really to understand here, is that these are the last places people clicked. So if we looked at organic search, these are the people who have come in from organic search and at the last click entry to the site. Whereas, and we can see here, you know, the second most popular one was direct. Now, this is your standard reports for being able to say, okay, which channels or which websites are performing best for us in terms of driving sessions into the sites and visits. How are they performing in terms of bounce rate, pages per session, and average session duration? And then finally, are they converting? Are they, in this case, an e-commerce site, are they buying a product, and at what rate, conversion rate, are they performing? But once you've got, and this is a big thing to understand with attribution on your site, once you've got a goal set up, so that can be e-commerce, or that can be a goal such as people viewing a brand engagement video, people playing a game in your site, people signing up to a newsletter, people adding comments to a blog post. Any of these can be goals that are set up. Once you have those in place, you're then able to go down. Sorry, that's just showing you that they're all last click, which is applied to all of these results and reports. below that, underneath the acquisition, so we've moved out of acquisition on the left-hand side, we're now into the left-hand nav of the conversions tab. At the bottom of it, quite hidden away, is the attribution tab. So what this allows you to do as a report is start comparing different models. And when we talk about models, this is an example here of comparing last-click attribution to first-click attribution. The differences here is, again, we've got the same channel groupings, direct, organic search, referral, and social networks, but they've become reordered where when we look at last interaction, direct actually produces more conversions, then organic search, referral produces a few, and social networks produce the least. But on the right-hand column, so think of this as if someone clicked through from, say, another website, so that would fall into the referral grouping, on Monday, and then someone came back directly because they remembered your site from that previous visit on Tuesday, and in that case then, in the last click model, you would be, that their attribution would be to direct, but in the first click model, they would actually be coming through on referral. So here we can see the difference here. On the right-hand column, you've got the first click interaction, the percentage. So this is the percentage change in conversions based on whether the people who have come in from their last click to the first click. So in this example, referrals were up 125% in terms of conversions from referrals. So people coming in from other websites in their first click, actually in this example, produced 9 conversions, whereas those coming in from last click produced 4 conversions. Now, interesting, you could say, well, that's quite academic. The value of this is really to say, okay, and there's different models you can compare here, but inside of this model is if we want more conversions, we need to reach more people at the early stage of research. So in this case then, going in and looking at which of the actual websites have referred those traffic to this website allows you to say, okay, we need to either do maybe content deals or maybe make those additional websites affiliates of ours. In other words, you need to work harder with those websites or go and find new websites that are similar and have a similar sort of audience to enable you to engage with your audience in their research phases. So in this example, you can see both organic search and referrals on a first click, or first interaction as Google Analytics calls it, a first click example which actually brings people into the site early in their decision-making process. So this is exactly when you're looking at increasing your sales or conversions on your site to goals. This is the sort of information that is actionable because you can then start saying, okay, where are we going to get more from rather than what's just the most popular route to our site at the moment. Now, I mentioned earlier about e-commerce. Now, one of the things I'd like to show, the thing is with e-commerce is that it's relevant to anyone who's set goals up. So one of the things I always like to show people inside of Google Analytics is the ability now where, and this is equally applicable whether you're running e-commerce or if you're running any goals, and you're able to actually see, based if you've got demographics switched on with your website, you're now able to actually see, in this case, how many people who are over the age of 45 went in and what products they bought. So in this example, we can see that we're actually looking at the most popular product there. So it's a zip fleece. And in this case, we can see how much of it's been sold, and we can see the difference between this actual specific demographic, so this is the over 45s, and those who have come. We've combined this into a segment, so being able to create custom segments becomes very powerful for looking at your e-commerce because you can really start to segment, pardon the pun, your audience into very specific types. So being able to have demographic information into Google Analytics, it makes it far more applicable to your real audience. We're not just dealing with numbers now, we're actually dealing with people, and it brings that humanity back into your numbers to be able to say, okay, this is the sort of people we're talking to, and that can lead to a whole range of insights as into what promotions you're going to do, how you're going to segment your email database, the sort of landing page design that you're going to bring into play, the type of keywords that different age groups are using, the interests, so you can actually break this down not just by demographics in terms of age and gender, but you can also break it down into interests, creating segments around this. So interests could be people who are sports fans, or people who are have a high interest in cars, or people who are interested in TV or films. All of these people can be identified in your traffic coming to your site, and therefore you can start creating content or promotions or offers accordingly. So and I'll give this example in e-commerce because you can drill down all the way down to a specific product level here. But for anyone who has got goals set up on their site, they're able to segment by actually introducing specific segments around their demographics, and therefore see the type of people who are actually going on to complete the goals that you've set or go on and buy the products that you're offering. So the e-commerce plus segments is a very strong offering, and the way to do that is actually setting the segments up. It's quite straightforward. If you click at the top of any of the reports, you have all sessions. That's that little blue circle at the top. If you click on there, it will open up, and it will enable you to actually create new segments. So in here, just in this example, I've clicked new segment, and therefore I've built a segment which actually shows me the demographics and enables me to pick which age groups I was looking for, and therefore be able to say, okay, I just want 45-year-olds, 45 plus in here. I could look at it by gender, so female, male, language, and where it says here affinity categories and in-market segments. These are all ways of actually seeing the type of topics of interest that your different types of audiences have. So segments is a very powerful thing. One of the things that we actually cover inside of our training for Google Analytics is very much being able to identify the different reports and where they're useful to you, understanding how to set up alerts and goals. So this is the type of training that we do in the introductory level. The advanced training is very much where we're getting into custom reports, regular expressions, building specific events, and universal analytics and custom dimensions. So you have a wide variety of options inside of the CIM's training, but I mentioned him earlier, Justin Catroni, very useful blog for anyone who's doing a more advanced Google Analytics. And then the other place I always refer people to is the Google Analytics YouTube channel, because there's nothing like being able to go through a video to have it explain to you how to do something and what buttons to press, etc. So this is some of the resources I'm going to actually be adding to this towards the end of the session, and being able to give more examples of this. And I'll also be including in there, following on from this, we're going to start the Q&A in a minute. So I'll be collecting actual specific URLs that answers the questions that have been raised. So it'll actually give you more ability to understand what is where you can get the information from. Obviously, training face-to-face means that it's pretty bespoke and can answer specific questions inside of your own setup. But there's so much resource out there as well if you're looking for just a guide as to how you can make the best of your Google Analytics implementation. Right, okay, so that's it for the slides. I'm going to go in now into Q&A. So what I believe...
Okay.
Yep.
So thank you very much, Graham. As you say, now it's time for the question and answer sessions. We've been receiving questions throughout the presentation, which I'd like to put a few to you now. But for the delegates that are still logged on and taking part, don't forget you can still add more questions while we're talking, so don't hold back if you want to know something. So just moving on to the first question, Graham, the first one that came in is perhaps fairly straightforward. Somebody looking for some clarification, I think, of a point you made early on in the presentation. presentation. I think you mentioned brand website when you were talking about the kind of sites we were examining here. What did you mean by brand website?
Well, in most cases, there's actually 5 definitions of website types, and the 3 I mentioned early on is, e-commerce you can always tell because you're selling something online and the order's completed online. Lead generation you can tell because you're actually producing sales contacts into an offline conversion process. But a brand website is one that has content that is actually enforcing brand values, brand messages, one that is not just, it's not just having a logo from a company or a brand at the top of a web page. It's actually something which has engaging content, which is, as I say, enforcing brand messages. And the reason why I say you need content is because as soon as you've got content, you're then able to group it. So you could actually create, as I showed you briefly earlier, a brand group. So you say this is the branded content. That could be videos, it could be web page, it could be blog posts. And then you can actually say, okay, you're then able to see what the engagement rates are. And then you could even take that group and turn it into a goal to see how many people actually interact with the brand content on the site, rather than say just a straightforward company information. So this is when we talk about brand, this is about the content that reinforces the actual brand messaging, not just everything with a logo on it.
Okay, thanks, Graham. Moving on, I think the next one, again, was about looking for some clarification of how you find one of the facilities that we were talking about earlier. If you're looking for the user flow facility within analytics, where do you find that? And can you remind us how you choose the landing page in order to then see the user flow connected with that page?
Let me see if I can just quickly get back to it to show you on the screen. 1 second. Yeah, so this is the slide we're talking about. This actually, if I go up to the one before, if you look on the menu on the left-hand side of this slide, we're in the behaviour section of the reports. We've got overview, and then underneath there you have behaviour flow, and that's where you're able to see this report with all the nice graphics on it, which actually shows you the green is how many people actually visited that page, and the red line is showing you how many people actually dropped off that page at that point. And then by highlighting a particular landing page, and the landing page can be chosen by just click. So if you're on a PC, it's just left click on one of the particular landing pages, and it says highlight this from visits from this page, and it will then show you the paths that people took from that starting point through the rest of the these are average journeys, so where the most popular pages are. You can't drill down to an individual journey, but these are aggregate data and therefore aggregate journeys across the site.
Okay. The next one's relating to the kind of activity that might be particularly relevant for a mobile-friendly site. Somebody who works for a B2B software provider is asking, how relevant is a mobile-friendly site to their business, do you think?
Well, could never answer that, but Google Analytics can, which is you start off by actually looking at how much of your traffic is currently mobile, and you can do that inside of the, if I just quickly go back up, if we look on the left-hand side here under where it says audience, so looking at the left-hand side of this graphic again, we've got, reading from the top, you've got real-time, you've got audience. Underneath audience, you've actually got a mobile menu and a report in there, so you can actually go in there and see how much of your traffic is actually from people using mobile devices, be those tablets or mobile phones. That starts the answering the question, is it relevant to you? I can't answer that, but maybe you are getting a percentage of people through already. Another thing you can do is using the date mechanic inside of Google Analytics, which is at the top right-hand corner. You can actually look at the growth year on year. So you'd actually select a comparative period of last year and see what the growth rate's been. So it may be small numbers at the moment. It may only make up 5% of your traffic, but if that's growing 100% year on year, then you can then start saying, okay, at what point do we need to actually start involving our website becoming mobile enabled? But the other point I'm going to re-emphasize is the fact that by doing that test I showed you earlier for how much traffic is coming in from Google, you're actually seeing what the risk is regarding the loss of traffic if your site isn't mobile enabled. So really, it's not a question of, it's really a question of how your audience is using your site today and what the risk is if you lose that traffic because from Google Organic, because Google is actually going to prefer your competitors if they're mobile enabled over your site, which isn't. So again, these questions can be answered inside of Google Analytics. There's no right and wrong answer. It surprises me how some sectors really haven't or don't see a lot of traffic, less than 5% of their traffic coming from mobile devices. But that isn't to say it's not going to impact you either tomorrow, literally tomorrow, or in a year's time.
Okay, and connecting on to that mobile theme, Graham, we've got one. In determining whether a site is mobile friendly, does that category include sites just specifically built for mobile, for example, an M site, or fully accessible responsive desktop sites as well?
It actually applies to both. Really, this is about which pages on your website are currently being found inside of Google Analytics, and you can see that again inside. You can see inside of Google Analytics those pages are getting traffic by going into the Acquisition Search Optimization tab. As long as you've got Webmaster Tools included. Integrated with your Google Analytics setup, it's going to be able to show you the keywords and the landing pages, and so therefore you can then actually see by going into that tab which pages are getting mobile traffic. So it will affect both. If you've got a mobile enabled website, so an M dot, then that should be fully mobile compatible. I would again say test it. Look inside of your Google search results for that M dot domain and see if you're able to, and make sure it's got the mobile friendly tag on it. But having your website mobile responsive, so this is your main website, so not your M dot domain name, this is your www version, is going to be a preferable result for Google, because it means that it's not having to redirect people. Google doesn't have a problem with putting people through to an M dot domain, but it has to be explicitly signposted when people get to the site to a redirect or through a strong call to action. From most people's perspective, they haven't invested in a mobile specific M dot site. They're actually going to be pushing instead everyone through to their main website. So in that case, then that's the one that has to be mobile friendly. Okay.
Moving on, another issue somebody has with using the system. How do you handle the response not defined? One person saying a lot of results display that.
Yeah, this is the shall we say, the curse of the Google organic search in the last few years, where Google has stripped out all of the keyword data that was being passed over to it. Your only source of keyword data now is going to be Google Webmaster Tools. You need to look at actually integrating Google Webmaster Tools into your Google Analytics. So when you go into Acquisition, Search Engine Optimization as a report, it actually shows you again the real keywords that people are typing into Google and what they clicked on. It's not perfect. In my SEO sessions, in my SEO training, I show people ways around it using Google Analytics and mashing it up through Excel into Google Webmaster Tools data to actually get you page level keyword data. But unfortunately, the days of having all of your keyword data in one place are gone. The only place you can get the not presented keyword data is through Google Webmaster Tools. So you need to make sure your Google Webmaster Tools and your Google Analytics are both integrated.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We had quite a few questions around that topic, so it's obviously something a lot of people feel a bit of frustration with.
I feel that frustration as well. I live with it day to day.
Okay, so the next one is, what if you have a traffic referral as an IP address but no other detail? So the IP address is coming up but no other detail.
That's going to be something a bit weird, possibly something like it could be a referral from an internal source, like an intranet. It could be a referral from a specific CDN, so content delivery network, where you've got traffic coming out of a particular node on a content delivery network. An IP address is, a pretty nameless thing on its own. The first thing I would always do is copy and paste that IP address out and go to Google reverse IP lookup. There's lots of tools out there that will help you do this. You put the IP address in, and it will tell you at least who owns that IP address, certainly at network level, and it might give you a steer as to whether that's internal to your own intranet, for instance, or if that's external. As I say, there's a lot of reasons why IP addresses can turn up. It's something you have to do specific investigation for that particular instance.
Okay. Sticking with identity, how is the information about the age of website visitors gathered?
Yes, this is quite an interesting question, because what Google's been doing through its DoubleClick network over the last, 5-10 years really, has been building up profiles. So this is user profiles of different types of people based on the sites that they visit, the searches they do. So this isn't tracking you as an individual here. This is saying, okay, you belong to this profile. And that profile means that you're, 25 to 29, interested in cars and interested in sports. So because of the type of sites that you visit, because of the searches you do, because of your behavior online puts you into a type of profile. So it's a sample and a profiling approach. It's as inaccurate or accurate as anything is in terms of sampling, but what it does give you is, if you look at Google Analytics without demographics set up, then you really have no sense of who's visiting your site. As soon as you put the demographics in place, at least it starts giving you a guide. And the profiling, when we've tested it, is actually quite accurate, and there is a way that you can actually look inside. If you use a Google account, you can look inside your own profile in there and your ad profile, and it will tell you what sort of profile Google has, the Google ad network's built up for you. And when I've done that on a regular basis, it's quite a close profile. So it's, that's very arbitrary testing, obviously, but it's in my opinion, it's better than what most people have ever dreamed of having in terms of the website demographic information, and it does give you a starting place to test both campaigns, content, and also promotions based on that demographic information.
Okay, yeah. Sticking with that kind of link to who's looking, what about bots? Does Google measure bots?
Well, Google will measure anything that, in effect, triggers the JavaScript on the page. So if bots are not, it used to be simple, bots couldn't trigger JavaScript, and therefore Google Analytics ignored all bots. And, well, today there's such a wide range of bots out there. A lot of them are behaving like users, so therefore if it behaves like a user, Google Analytics will see it as a user. You've got good bots. You can put the search engine bots in that category, and you've got other bots which are site testing bots, a wide range of bots, news gathering bots, all this sort of stuff. You've then got bad bots. Bad bots are trying to find ways into your website, trying to find information you want to keep hidden, trying to hack your site or scrape content. And in that case, then it depends on the sophistication of the bot writers as to what level and how humanized they look from a Google Analytics perspective. So Google Analytics does have in its admin section a specific option to exclude bots. These are the ones that Google Analytics knows about, and you can switch that on in your admin section. Therefore, it will actually remove bot data outside of your view, which can be useful, but it definitely does not exclude most of the bots that as an SEO you'd be dealing with. So if bots are a problem on your site, then you're going to need to do more exclusion, either at the report level or using filtering, or you might even have to do it at the CMS level, so the bots are never actually they're never actually served any real content. They're redirected. There's different ways of dealing with bots, but as I say, the main thing is the good bots all announce themselves when they visit the site, so they're quite easy to identify and segment. The bad bots will pretend to be humans and therefore will cause more and more problems.
Okay. Thinking a bit more fundamentally, perhaps, what percent of search is via Google and what percent is via other search engines? Have you got a feel for that?
Depends where you are in the world. You know, in the US it's 60-65%. In the UK it's about 90% plus are all coming out of Google. If you're in somewhere like China, then you're probably talking less than 20% of traffic is going to be coming to your site from Google. Same with Russia. They have their own large search engines, so Baidu and Yandex, which are going to be producing, over 50-60% of your traffic. Well, actually, probably more like 60-70% of your traffic are going to be coming from other, very strong national or regional search engines. So it does depend where you are, but as a rule of thumb, if you're in Europe, you're going to be looking at over 80%, possibly as high as 90%.
Okay. Next one's a bit more of a technical problem. Somebody who feels their analytics don't seem to be registering everything. And an example of that is MailChimp saying someone's clicked through on an email campaign, but that action doesn't seem to be showing up in the analytics. Why might that be?
That's something that we cover in our introductory course, but they need to look at something called campaigns. So inside of Google Analytics you have campaigns. Then you have something where you can actually campaign tag any landing pages on your site. So any link in your MailChimp, and I know MailChimp very well, inside of MailChimp you can automate setting up campaign tags. So you need to make sure that every time you go to set up and send a MailChimp campaign, you need to tick the Google Analytics box, name the campaign. So in this case, you might call it April newsletter or whatever, and then Google Analytics UTM tags, which are the campaign tracking tag, will be automatically appended to the landing page tags inside of your email, and therefore it will actually be tracked as email inside of Google Analytics. If you don't do that, then it can end up looking like it's direct traffic because there isn't an actual source of the traffic because it's coming out of, for instance, desktop email applications, and therefore Google Analytics just sees it as appearing on the site, and therefore it all gets bundled up inside of the direct box. So yeah, it's what they're looking for is campaign tracking, UTM tags, but in that example with MailChimp, it's very easy. You just tick tracking Google Analytics in the campaign setup.
Okay. Next one is looking at spam. Somebody has a massive problem with spam referral and they're struggling to filter it out. Can they get rid of it?
Spam referral, I'm going to assume is going to be, it's going to be probably bot related, or their site has got I've seen instances where the site has actually been hacked and they're getting traffic into, say, a payload, a Trojan or a virus file that's actually been hosted on their site. So in that case, then, it depends on what's driving the spam traffic. Is it a bot, which is in effect attacking your site, or is it emails that are being sent out and then referring through to a link that's hosted on your site? Either way, you're going to need to filter it based on source. So in some cases I've seen it targeting particular countries, and if that country isn't part of your key demographics and therefore you're not expecting traffic from there, but they're spiking, they're producing 50-60% of the traffic, in that case then you might create a separate view and a filter which actually removes traffic from that particular source or that particular country or particular landing page, for instance. If all that spam traffic's going through to a particular landing page or file, then you just remove all requests to that. So it does depend on the specific instance of how you define the spam traffic. Or if it's bot-based, then I would say in a lot of cases you're going to need to look at removing it, build a new view, and actually put in some more sophisticated, regular expression-based behavioral filters to remove that bot traffic out of that specific view.
Okay, Graham. Well, we're just drawing to a close now, and I think that's just about the last question we've got any time for. So thank you for everybody for taking part, and thank you, Graham, for a really informative session and some great answers to the questions. We hope everybody found the content useful today, and we'd really love to hear any feedback you might have. A brief survey will appear on your screen shortly, so please do take part. And finally, I'd just like to add another quick reminder, and I think this answers quite a few questions that have popped up during the session, that a link to the recording of the webinar will be emailed to you in the next couple of days, and you will also have access to it via Marketing Expert, so look out for that. So all it remains to say then is thank you very much for attending, and goodbye for now from CIM.